Beef Wellington. Today we're making a very special dish with a very special person. You like that?
It's very nice.
Thanks. It might intimidate a lot of people, so I got a true professional to help me out with it.
Let's get wild with this welly.
First things first, we must prep our Duxelle.
A Duxelle may sound scary, but it's essentially just this sort of mushroom paste that's going to provide a bunch of flavor for that Wellington. It's a combination of garlic, shallots, olive oil, and mushrooms.
Before I start tearing up like crazy, I'm going to start cutting down the shallot. And you really want to get a super nice fine chop just like this.
Next up, I'm going to go into a food processor with some cremini mushrooms.
And you just want to give it several little pulses.
We don't want this turning into a paste right now. We want them to look something like this.
Fun fact, I absolutely despise mushrooms, and this is the first time I've ever cooked them. I don't know why I hate them so much, but we have to make a beef Wellington the proper way.
Into a non-stick pan, we'll go in with a bit of olive oil.
Press in some fresh heartburn.
Our nicely chopped shallots. And we'll crank up the heat to low and begin cooking it down.
And last but not least, don't forget a nice pinch of salt.
Now once these become nice and translucent, we'll go in with our mushrooms. And this right here is why I like to use a nice large pan to cook down my Duxelle.
We're gonna cook this for about 10 minutes to start releasing all that moisture, and this Duxelle is gonna shrink and concentrate in flavor. Once it has cooked down for 7-8 minutes, it should be nice and pasty like this. Nick is gonna pour in a nice mixture of beef stock and vinegar.
Along with that, we're gonna go ahead and take the leaves off of 2 stems of some fresh thyme.
And then after the added liquid dries out once again, this Duxelle is complete. Next, we have the meats.
What you want to use when making a beef Wellington is what's called a chateaubriand. If you were to portion this out, this right here is what filet mignons would come from. But a Wellington has to be even, so we're going to trim off this end piece here.
Once Nick has prepped the meat, we're going to generously salt this. And then with the pepper, the filet gets the same type of love.
Now, one of the most important steps of making our Wellington is time to sear off our beef.
The searing process on the Wellington is fairly simple. You just want to keep on turning it and getting a sear all over. Completely raw on the inside, and then I'll let it rest.
Now, a very important next step is the second we finish cooking that beef, we're going to paint over it with some Dijon mustard. For the next step here, onto your cutting board, lay down some plastic wrap.
Now, since we don't do pork around here, we cannot use prosciutto. In replacement, I'm going to be using some beautiful beef bacon. Beef bacon. It's made from a freaking cow. I'm going to lay down piece by piece, overlapping halfway. Super carefully, I'm going to take our Duxelle and I'm going to lightly drop it everywhere. You want to evenly spread it out, and then you want to leave a little spaces between the edges of the beef bacon.
Once our Duxelle is perfectly pressed out, we'll lay the beef at the base. Take the base of the plastic wrap, and then rolling very, very tight and carefully, go ahead and roll it all up. And once we've rolled it nice and tight, go ahead and roll it up the rest of the way, and then pinch down the edges and twist. Then into the fridge we go for about 30 to 45 minutes with our little burrito to let it firm up.
For this Wellington, we're going to be using a store-bought puff pastry. I am not making that from scratch. It's too much work. Anyways, we're going to take our rolling pin and lightly press it out. And when it's this thickness, it's perfect. To finally assemble our Wellington, we're going to be needing some egg wash. This is just egg yolks and water mixed well together.
To lay down our Wellington, we're first going to map out about where it's going to sit on the puff pastry. Then we'll paint the puff pastry with a bit of egg wash. Gently and carefully unwrap the Wellington, still making sure to keep it nice and intact. Then lay it down on your puff pastry.
We're going to paste the edges with more egg wash.
Then carefully but confidently lay the rest of your puff pastry over the top of your Wellington. You want to make sure to press down on all the corners so that it sticks, then layer it on the corner edges. Now trim around the edge of the Wellington with a knife. To make sure everything's pressed down, take a fork and go all around the edges of your Wellington, which will really make sure that everything is nice and secure.
The final step, we're gonna grab our egg wash and just Picasso it on the entire Wellington. We're gonna spray down our baking dish. Sorry. And then Wellington goes on. Now we're gonna go into the oven at 400 until it turns golden like me.
There's our welly. We've got a beautiful golden brown coating across the top. And as you can see, it's got these nice patterns where it's cracked a little bit in the dough. And given we use beef bacon instead of prosciutto, there has been some fat that rendered off. But it's a price we're willing to pay for this.
I'm going to let Nick do the honors. And we should know that we allowed this to rest for at least 10 minutes.
Here we go. Let's slice in. We have to make sure we keep the pastry looking perfect here. Oh, that crunch. And now, the moment of truth. Wow, that is perfect. Besides the fact that the meat is cooked properly, the way that you can really tell we've cooked a proper Wellington is the fact that it's very tight and nicely put together.
And as always,
now bismillah.
The beef bacon and the dough are amazing.
I actually like it with beef bacon.
It's fire, right? It gives it smokiness. Mushrooms ruin stuff for me. I could handle it if the mushrooms weren't there. The mushrooms suck.
I feel like you're gonna make it sound bad for people.
Let them. I'm being honest. It's really good though. And there you have it, folks. Another one in the books.